Have you ever wondered about Cain's story in the Bible? What if I told you that his mark might be something more than what you've heard? There's a lot more mystery to it than just a passing mention. Imagine that the Bible briefly mentions Cain's mark, but doesn't explain it fully. What it left out has amazed people for thousands of years. Welcome to the Bible Stories with Gian channel. We will discuss in this video the hidden story of Cain's mark. What the Bible doesn't say. Please subscribe to the channel before proceeding to the video. So what was this mark? Was it something physical or spiritual? And why did God choose to protect someone like Cain, who had just committed murder? These are the questions that have confused theologians, historians, and everyday people. Today we're diving into the hidden story of Cain's mark and what the Bible doesn't say. Let's start with Cain himself. From the very beginning, Cain made a fateful decision that changed his life and perhaps the course of human history. Cain was the firstborn son of Adam and Eve, the first human baby ever born. You can imagine the pressure on Adam and Eve as parents. But things didn't go as they had hoped. Cain worked in the fields, while his younger brother Abel took care of the sheep. One day both brothers brought offerings to God. Abel brought the firstborn of his flock, while Cain brought fruits from his labor. God accepted Abel's offering, but did not accept Cain's. In that moment, Cain became so jealous that he lured Abel into the fields and did something unimaginable. He killed his brother. After this, God asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" Genesis 4:9. Cain coldly replied, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" This was the moment that would define Cain's life. God cursed him to be a wanderer, cast away from the very land that once sustained him. But what comes next is where the mystery deepens. Instead of letting Cain suffer alone, God did something surprising. He put a mark on Cain to protect him from anyone seeking to avenge Abel's death. But what exactly was this mark? In Genesis 4:15, the Bible says, "The Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him." It's a short statement, but one that raises many questions. The Bible tells us why the mark was given, to prevent Cain's death at the hands of others. However, it doesn't tell us what the mark was. Was it a physical scar, a visible sign, or perhaps an invisible divine force that shielded him from harm? Because the Bible doesn't provide details, people have come up with many interpretations throughout history. One early Jewish commentary, Targum Jonathan, suggests that God put a horn on Cain's forehead. A horn could be a symbol of protection and strength. This idea even inspired medieval European images of Cain, sometimes depicting him with animal-like features. In other Jewish traditions, the mark might have been a shining or glowing sign, visible to everyone, as divine figures were often believed to emit light. The Book of Jubilees offers another interpretation. It doesn't define a specific mark, but says that fear fell upon everyone around Cain. According to this interpretation, it wasn't a physical mark, but a psychological effect. People were afraid of Cain because of God's divine protection. Early Christian theologian Ephraim the Syrian believed the mark wasn't physical at all, but rather an internal change. Cain's guilt separated him from God, and this burden became visible in the way he carried himself. Ephraim suggested that Cain's internal struggle was the real mark. A mystical idea from the Jewish text Zohar describes Cain's mark as a letter from God's name, offering divine protection. This interpretation adds a spiritual layer to the story, suggesting that Cain carried a piece of divine knowledge as a reminder of his relationship with God, despite his sin. In the medieval Christian era, theologians took a different approach. Some believed the mark represented eternal damnation, a spiritual separation from God. The Glossa Ordinaria, a popular biblical commentary in medieval times, suggested that Cain and his descendants were cursed forever. Unfortunately, This idea was twisted in the 19th century to justify racism, with some claiming that Cain's mark was a change in skin color. This misinterpretation has been discredited by modern biblical scholars. In Islamic tradition, Cain, known as Abel, also plays an important role, though the mark is seen differently. While the Quran does not mention a specific mark, some scholars suggest that Cain was burdened with deep regret. A famous hadith says that every time someone commits murder, part of the sin is shared by Cain. This shows that the true mark of Cain might be the moral burden of his actions, rather than a physical sign. But what if the mark wasn't a curse or a symbol of racial difference? Why would God go to such lengths to protect Cain, a murderer? This brings us to the deeper meaning of the mark. It wasn't just a punishment, it was also a form of divine protection. By sparing Cain's life, God showed that despite the severity of Cain's sin, there was still the possibility of redemption. Cain wasn't given the death penalty. Instead, he was made to live with his guilt, forever marked, but also protected by God. This paradox challenges our understanding of justice and mercy. It's as if God was saying, "You will suffer the consequences of your actions, but I won't allow violence to continue in a cycle." In this way, the story of Cain's mark carries deep significance. It wasn't just about Cain. It was a message for humanity that sin has consequences, but God's mercy is always present, even in our darkest moments. Throughout history, the mark of Cain has left an impression on culture, literature, art, and even modern media. His story has been retold, often as a symbol of guilt, isolation, and divine protection. Many Bible scholars today look at the story of Cain and Abel with fresh eyes. Instead of focusing solely on the physical nature of the mark, they see it as a symbol of the complexity of human existence, where justice and mercy are always intertwined. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless you.